again, and welcome to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. I'm your host, certified sex therapist Laurie Watson, author of Wanting Sex Again, and blogger at Psychology Today and WebMD. And I have with me Dr. Adam Mathews, my co-host, who's a couples therapist, psychotherapist, and president of NCAMFT. Foreplay is dedicated to helping couples keep it hot. Each episode, we cover an aspect of sex that impacts your sex life and something that you can relate to. So if you find our discussions helpful, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We would love it if you would tell a friend about us. You can find us also on the web at foreplayrst.com. And if you have a comment or a topic that you'd like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to us at info@foreplayrst.com. Thanks for listening. Now on to today's topic. So you're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, and today we're going to talk about involuntary celibacy.
Involuntary celibacy. And that took me a minute to kind of get around what we're talking about there, because I can see a lot of people in low sex marriages going, yes, that's me. I'm involuntarily celibate.
Yeah. So they're in a sexless marriage, don't want to be, and I think that I really want to distinguish this from the usual sexlessness. So we term a marriage sexless if they're having sex less than one time a month, and low sexed if they're having sex less than every other week. But these are people who are really, really, truly sexless. So they've gone for 6 months, at least 6 months without any sex. And I do see patients like this. And I would say more than anything, we have people writing in about this. Like, I'm desperate. Because the person who is involuntarily celibate still often has hope. They still want things to change. They want it to be different. So they're really frustrated. And I read a really interesting study about this over the weekend. It was written by Denise Donnelly and Elizabeth Burgess, and it was called The Decision to Remain in an Involuntarily Celibate Relationship. And it was published in 2008. If you want to go there and read that, that might help you. But they talked about, what happens? How do people become sexless? Why do people stay in this? And kind of maybe is there anything you can do about it?
Yeah. And how does this become a problem for people in relationships? Because I don't think, obviously people don't just enter into those relationships saying we want to be in a sexless marriage or we want to be involuntarily celibate. So
it's like
how does it
2/3 of the people who get to this place, there's kind of like a slow devolving into sexlessness. So it's kind of like the frog in tepid water that you start to cook. They don't notice that they're pretty soon in hot water and being cooked. Yeah. But there's all kinds of things that are interfering with their sex life. It could be anything from mental illness of their partner to addiction to the stresses of life to, child rearing. There's ways that something happens, and over time, they just let go a little bit by little bit, or their partner has low desire and lets go themselves little bit by little bit. And this can be very frustrating and insidious, the way they get to this point.
Well, and oftentimes those things build on each other. It may not be just one thing that caused it, and it's low desire plus child rearing plus job stress.
Right. It's overdetermined.
And over time, those things just build and build and build until it removes sex. Each one removes sex from the relationship until they look up and they haven't had sex in months and months.
Yeah.
Right?
And there was about, I think it was 16% or so of couples where there's something sudden that happens. So it might be a change in health. It might be the partner had an affair, and so the other partner doesn't forgive that, and they just cut off sex completely. Or the partner has an affair and doesn't want to have sex in their marriage, in their committed partnership. They're having sex somewhere else. It might be kind of, we had a child, that's what I wanted out of this relationship, and now all my energy is going into the child. And then there's a smaller percent, about 10% of couples, and I'm not adding up all the percents, but about 10% of couples kind of started off with little or low sex. Like they knew going into it, we didn't really have good sex, but my partner said, well, once we get married, it'll be better, or we'll have more time together, we'll be together. And there were all these excuses, and they might have even been anxious about it, but then they got married or they got into the commitment, and it turns out there was even less sex. So they had a heads up, but somehow or another they convinced themselves, don't worry about it, just keep going, it'll get better with time. And this is one of the things I tell my sons is I say, you know what? If the sexual chemistry falls off during engagement, that is a huge red flag. Like, don't just sit with that. Like, really, truly explore that and get to the bottom of it. Because I've seen this over and over in my counseling room is people who do come in this same way. Their partner wasn't very sexual to begin with, but they thought it would get better. And it didn't. And so, to me, that's a red flag in the beginning.
I think when we talk about this, the damage to a relationship is not always the obvious one, right? The one that we would obviously say. Obviously, lack of sexual intimacy is going to pull couples apart, right? But there's other costs to a sexless marriage that people don't often take into account or don't always associate it with being in a sexless marriage, right?
Right. And a sexless marriage, obviously, the involuntary celibacy is one person wants sex and the other, for whatever reasons, can't have it, doesn't want it, whatever. So you're right. I mean, one of the costs, of course, is the sexual frustration of the one. And oftentimes the relational fallout is, huge resentment, if not rage and anger about this, fighting about it. We say all the time here that sex is glue in a relationship. It's what keeps people together. It cements the bond, both literally physiologically. Oxytocin is released, which is a bonding chemical when we have orgasm. And basically the next person we look at, who is our partner in bed, we feel more connected to them. So without sex, there's going to be fallout. But also, as I was reading this study, depression, the person who's not having sex feels really depressed, kind of the thrill about life is gone, and they feel often deep rejection. That somehow or another, why not me? Am I ugly? Am I unattractive? Am I not sexy enough? And so that can lead to low self-esteem, be really damaging.
Yeah, that one's huge because lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence in a relationship is going to lead you to pull away. Right, and going to lead to a lot of other stuff as well.
Yeah,
that's damaging in the relationship.
And even difficulty concentrating on their work. They have trouble with that because they're preoccupied with how can I get this thing sexual again, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think all of us have this fantasy that sex is going to get better in relationship.
Naturally, right?
Naturally.
That sex is going to get better naturally, that we're not going to have to do much work, that it's going to return someday.
Yeah, and this is not a strictly female problem. It isn't the women alone who don't want sex. Many men as well. In fact, the study showed it wasn't necessarily gender specific, that there were men as well who didn't want sex. One of the things I see really commonly in aging couples is that the man, when he starts to struggle with ED, he actually has desire for sex, but he feels so anxious about his performance that he shuts down sexual approaching. He shuts down initiation. And women who, especially maybe these days, women who are 50 and 60, were not socialized to initiate. They don't see it as their job. They see it as unfeminine. Yeah. And so they're not initiating. And so the man who thinks, she's disappointed in my penis, right?
Yeah. She's in my performance.
In my performance. And so, he shuts down from asking, and he thinks her lack of initiation means she too doesn't want it. And so that's one reason they shut down.
Yeah, and I think men often, I've seen several men who don't desire sex and don't really initiate sex, and they don't even know why that's the case, right?
Yeah.
They oftentimes just, the reasoning is lost on them, and they don't attribute all this other stuff that's going on in their life to their low desire. They may even say, it's not that I don't desire sex, it's I just don't, I don't initiate, or I don't pursue it. It's just not at the top of my list. And it can be really confusing, I think, for a lot of men because they're culturally programmed to say we should be desiring sex.
Sure. And again, check his testosterone, ask him to check his testosterone. But if that's normal, I think that inner psychological conflict, unconscious conflict, is often the root of true sexlessness. We know there's a lot of physiological reasons and mental health reasons and busyness reasons, but a person who withdraws sexually is avoidant. They're avoidant of intimacy.
Yeah.
And so there's something that is, deeply problematic in that.
I think a lot of listeners might say, why in the world would people stay in those kind of relationships?
It's a good question, and it's a hard question. And I think, I'm thinking of one client of mine who has been in a sexless marriage for so many years and came to me really to see if we could work that out, but over time realized that wasn't going to work out. And so this research study uses a social exchange theory. Basically, social exchange is, am I getting out of this relationship enough? Am I getting a fair shake? Yeah. Even, and obviously there's resentment and disappointment that they're not getting sex. So why do they stay? It's like a cost-benefit analysis. And I think we should come back after the break and talk about the many ways people make that choice to stay in sexlessness. And we know this is not like the sexiest podcast out there. We understand that. But we do have so many people who struggle in this way that we want to say something to you and see if we can help you a little bit. So you're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews. We'll be right back.
Wanting sex again. How to rediscover desire and heal a sexless marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
It is one of my great joys in life to be able to really help individuals and couples find strength in their relationships and really find hope again.
Licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. Adam Mathews from Mathews Counseling.
I work with a wide variety of issues, including depression and anxiety, marital issues, issues with adolescence. I believe that therapy should be designed around you, that it should be personalized to who you are and to your unique situation.
Therapy is available in office, online, and by phone.
I want therapy to be comfortable for everyone. At our office, you'll find that we sit around a fireplace in deep, comfortable chairs, look at the problem differently, and offer practical solutions for you to take home and utilize outside of the therapy room.
Schedule today and rediscover hope.
You can find me on the web at mathewscounseling.net, Mathews with one T. You can contact us through email or phone and find a lot of resources on our website, mathewscounseling.net.
So we're back, Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, talking about, of all things, sexlessness, basically involuntary celibacy, when one partner really, truly refuses sexual contact. Not just sexual intercourse, but all sexual contact, does not want to be sexual. Yeah. And what do you do about that? And why do you stay in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say to young married couples, if it's so shut down that it's 6 months and a year, please really examine, a lifetime of this. Try to project ahead, 5 years. Can you live a sexless life? I see so many young couples without children, and they have such dysfunction that they are genuinely sexless. And I think, really think about this. This is, in my mind, infidelity. When it's not fulfilling the vow of a promise onto an erotic and sexual life with your partner.
I would say that, though, too, like there are things you can do to try to work on that. It's not hopeless if you feel trapped in a sexless marriage, but there does have to be intentionality. I think both partners have to say, let's work on this and let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I would say, in our practice, right, we've seen people who are truly sexless. Yeah. I mean, I had a couple recently, 14 years sexless, moved into full sexual relationships. So we're hopeful.
But I think what you're saying, though, too, is that if you see this, especially early on in your relationship, don't wait. Don't wait to get help. I think, most couples, 14 years is a long time. Most couples wait 6 years too long to go to therapy
for any marital problem.
For any marital problem. For sex, it's sometimes longer because it's such a hard topic to admit. But like you're saying, if in the beginning of your relationship, it's sexless, it's a warning sign that you need to start to get some help because it's not necessarily just going to change over time.
Exactly. So why do people stay in this when it's genuinely sexually dead? Partly, the cost benefit. Like sometimes maybe a woman, menopausal age, and she says, there's not that many good men out there, or I would, be economically disadvantaged, or, a lot of my friends say that their partners are giving up on sex too, and or my value, my attractiveness is lower. I think, one of the darn things about what is so unfair is it seems that men get more attractive as they age in terms of the value that society places on them, right? They're often more financially stable, and so they're viewed as more attractive, whereas women, if their value is in how they look, they're becoming less attractive. So, she may be in that marriage thinking, well, it's probably better to stay even though I don't have sex. My benefits outweigh the costs of leaving. Oftentimes there's things that we see as a benefit, stability of long-term relationship. We have children together. For my children's sake, it's better that I stay in a stable relationship and provide for them a basis of love and care and stability than get out, even though my life could be more sexually exciting.
Staying together for the kids, essentially.
They stay together for the kids. And some people stay together, because they actually love each other. They are good friends. They might even be best friends. And they think, it's without sex. And that's disappointing to me. But there's all these other things in the relationship that I really like, so I'm going to stay for those things. My cost-benefit analysis says staying is better than what I might get out there. I have to risk maybe being married to somebody who, it's pick your poison. I know what I've got now, right? Better to dance with the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And I don't know what I might get.
Yeah. I'm fearful that we're painting a really bleak picture for people, but I guess if they're involved in that relationship, it is pretty bleak.
Right. And I'm talking about the ones who are truly sexless for a period of time. Number one thing we want you to do is get therapy. Mm-hmm. When I think about how do you change this, right? How do you seriously change this? It has to be your willingness to destabilize the relationship. There is no other way around this. And it's a bitter thing to think about because essentially you have to say, I need a marriage or a relationship that is sexual. Yeah. This, what we're calling a marriage, is not a marriage to me. It has to be sexual.
Yeah.
And so that means, I'm willing to pull out the stops, potentially to leave, in order to say to my partner, it's that important.
Yeah, we have to do something about this. That's what you mean by destabilizing it. It's like it's being okay with rocking the boat.
We have to have a huge conflict about it. Mm-hmm. We can't just have one conflict and then go back to the same pattern the way it was. You have to say, look at, we're going to marital therapy. We're going to sex therapy. We have to do whatever it takes to get through this.
Yeah, oftentimes I have people that say, well, I brought it up and there was still nothing done about it, so what do I do? And we have to talk about you have to keep bringing it up. And then you have to start, if nothing happens, you have to start drawing some boundaries about what you're willing to tolerate. And if it may not be leaving the marriage, but it might be insisting on therapy. It might be insisting on finding other ways to get help, but saying this is not going to go away, and I'm going to have to keep bringing this up until we get some kind of movement on it.
Right. And I mean, maybe you and I differ a little on this, Adam. I mean, we're all about helping couples keep it hot, and we're all about helping marriages stay together. But I think sometimes marriages get so bad that people do have to examine their choice to leave. And I think one solution that sexless, involuntarily celibate people make is they step outside the marriage, right? They have an affair partner. It's like, okay, I can't have sex with my partner. My partner is completely unwilling, so I'll have an affair partner. And that is a solution that these people make. But I would say to them, think about leaving the marriage first. Doing it in an orderly way, so that it gives you true, full capacity to have a fully loving relationship. A second relationship, to me is probably a better option than the affair.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think it's a better option than the
And I'm
affair.
not judging anybody who's made a different choice.
Yeah,
but
I don't think that. I think you're right. As couples therapists and marriage therapists, we want people to stay together. And I lean toward that.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I think what I see people doing is they jump to that option, what I would call the nuclear option, probably a little bit too quick when they haven't done the steps in between that to really try to help get their marriage back on track. And so that's what I mean more of is that have you done the things to move it along and to try to get the help that you need? Have you stayed in therapy long enough? People don't stay in therapy long enough.
That's true.
They come for 3 or 4 sessions and they want it to be
they want 15 years fixed in 3 sessions. Yeah. It's are you kidding?
And so they bail on it too soon, or they don't want it. They don't tolerate the hard stuff. I think when you're talking about destabilizing it, they're dealing with it and dealing with the conflict that it brings up and not avoiding it. And so that's what I mean. I mean more like doing the work to be able to try to bring it along. I mean, it takes 2, like your partner has to come along with you ultimately. But I think that's
But it's
that's
often not just the fault of the person who has the low libido or who is refusing sex. I mean, one of the things that happens in therapy is self-confrontation. Sometimes I hear people who come in and the one partner is so ugly, which is a Southern word to mean they're just kind of so awful to their partner. I think, oh God, I wouldn't have sex with you either. I mean, they're hostile and they don't even recognize their hostility, and that pushes their partner away. Yeah. And some of this is confrontation. Most dynamics in a relationship are dynamic. That means you both contribute to it. Yeah. It isn't just, it's easy to look at and attack the person who doesn't want to have sex as they're the problem. Yeah. But it is usually flowing between both people.
Well, in the longer
time, there's little things that have happened over time.
And the more that it's gone on, too, the more that hostility becomes anger over hurts that have happened in the past, right? Part of the reason we want people to come in early is so that things don't build up. They don't turn into resentments, and then you're not acting out of those resentments, and you're not hostile and mean because you're angry and hurt. You're getting those things out of the way early on and resolving a lot of those conflicts. And I think that's what people get caught in a pattern, and they have a very hard time seeing it that keeps them locked into a sexless marriage.
Right, and then it's not just the sexlessness, right, that is painful. It's just being together, and every moment is painful because it's bitter.
Yeah.
And we've had letters from people who sound absolutely bitter, so they're staying sexless and they're staying unhappy, and that just sounds so awful to me. If you're going to stay, you have to find some form of acceptance that says, okay, this is not going to happen, but I'm going to refocus on the reasons I'm here, whether it's to stabilize for my children, or if it's going to be, I enjoy my partner in many other ways. Yeah. I mean, you have to refocus and redirect your energies toward the positive, or your entire life is miserable.
Yeah, because your entire marriage isn't bad. right?
Sometimes
maybe, but well, let me say it a different way. Just because you're not having sex doesn't mean that there's nothing good in your relationship.
That's right. That's right.
I think I used a lot of double negative.
I hear you. I agree.
But so being able to refocus on the positive things mean you're searching for them and you're actively looking for the other areas that may be good. Like maybe you might be really good partners at getting things done, a really good team.
Yeah.
Right? Your friendship may be really high. You may have a lot in common.
You may be making a difference together in the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know political alliances, marriages out there. We look, are they really still hot in the bedroom? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But they're shouldering together against the world.
Yeah. So there could be a lot of good things, and probably are a lot of good things that are other parts of the relationship that are still really good.
But we sympathize with you. And I mean, obviously we're doing this podcast because we recognize sex is such a high value in terms of how we think about our quality of life. So our tips for you are, first of all, it's got to be destabilized. You have to be willing to have conflict, a big conflict and a regular conflict until you get to the bottom of it. And I know that's scary, but that's the only way I can see through it, is you have to be willing to destabilize the relationship, to break up the sexless pattern.
Yeah. And then number 2, really kind of taking some energy and putting it toward refocusing on the good parts of your relationship, even if they're really small. You want to put some energy toward finding what those are and really focusing on them.
Absolutely, because particularly if some of what is pushing you apart is the unfriendly, angry pieces, and that pushes you apart even further, exacerbating the problem, focusing on the good of your partner is at least one healing aspect.
And then finally, I mean, we're both therapists, we're both counselors, so get into therapy,
and we offer Skype counseling too, so call us.
Yeah, we believe it's beneficial, we believe it works, and it can help with these kind of problems.
Yeah, and don't wait too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We hope we can continue to give you some light. You're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.